Hey everyone, this is Lisa from Life in Layouts, and today I am back with day number 19 of 30 Days of Sketches with Chrissy's Beautiful Life. Today's sketch comes from Brandi Jo, and I will link her social media below. I pulled out my Doodlebug The Great Outdoors collection to document some photos of Tom Sawyer's Island. When I first saw this sketch, I thought it would be really cool to have a picture of the sign on the left-hand side of the layout and then some supporting photos on the right. I did use the Doodlebug Petite Print Bonbon to cut out this really large Polaroid. I'm going to put the map behind the Polaroid, and I did adhere it with some liquid adhesive. Once I got the liquid adhesive down, I decided that I would add some washi tape to the back just to make sure that it was secure. This map is right when you get on Tom Sawyer's Island, so right after you get off the raft. And it just shows you all of the different places that are available on Tom Sawyer's Island. I then started looking through the papers, and I pulled out this one sheet of paper that I only have a little bit left on. I think I used the tree side on another layout, and I used a lot of it. So I just cut it in half, and it has all of the things that you would think about when you go camping. And I thought that that was perfect since Tom Sawyer and Huck were always on adventures and always out doing camping type things. So there's like campfires and fishes, as well as a cooler and some worms and a lantern. Things that they might not have had access to, but I thought it added a little extra. I also pulled out the Swiss dots in the blue to add to the top of the paper. I did use my border punch, and this one has the holes in it that I usually stitch with. But with the Swiss dots on the paper, you really can't see the holes that would be used for stitching, and I was just more looking for a wave feature. I did have quite a bit of struggles trying to get it down. I probably should have put it down first and then added the paper with all the icons on it above it, but you know, I like to do things the hard way. So I finally get it down, and then I decide that I'm going to use the Swiss dot paper on the back of the Polaroid as well. So I'm just measuring the brown piece to see how large it is, and then really just using the major technology of my fingernail to make sure that I am cutting it out in the right size. Of course, you know that I'm going to gut the center of that, because why waste all that Doodlebug Petite Print? I always struggle with gutting it properly, so I do usually have to pull out my scissors to snip the ends. Once I get it gutted, I added some ATG to the back of it and then just overlapped the brown just a little bit. And I love the color combination of that brown and the blue. I decided that I would purchase this piece from Kelly Bell Designs. She has a collection that includes titles from a bunch of different places at Disney. And this one was in Frontierland, so there was a couple different pieces from Frontierland. I'm sure I'm going to use the other pieces as well, since we have tons of Disney photos from there. But this one just says Tom Sawyer's Island, and it has a tent that's kind of like a teepee, and then a couple of trees. I did have to use my X-Acto knife to trim out a couple of the pieces that didn't cut properly from my silhouette. The great thing about Kelly Bell Designs is you can just add these images to the silhouette software using the print and cut feature. I print it out on my home printer and then run it through my silhouette to cut it out. So no fussy cut needed. I used some liquid adhesive as well as my ATG to adhere that to the Polaroid. And then I start to work on the right-hand side of the layout. On the right-hand side of the layout, it does call for 6 photos. I'm going to add an additional 4 photos by pulling out some flip-flaps. These photos are of Eli playing on Tom Sawyer's Island, as well as some of the signs that we see there. I don't know if decorations is the right word, but just some of the items that are on the island. I was trying to decide what I wanted to do. At first, I thought I could use these tags behind it, but I really wasn't liking that. Then I thought I would pull out the 6x6 paper pad and maybe look through that. And I finally decided that I really wanted to just use a bunch of different colors from the petite prints or from the 6x6 paper pad that gives me the ability to have smaller size prints. I was able to find several of the 6x6 papers that would work perfectly, to include a plaid, as well as a blue, a green, an orange, and a yellow. I then decided to look at the Doodlebug petite prints to see which color I was still lacking. I decided that even though I purchased the Doodlebug petite prints, and I will keep the Doodlebug petite prints with the collection when I first get it, but once the collection started to dwindle down, I was seeing a lot of petite prints that were left over. So I thought it would be easier for me to remove all my Doodlebug petite prints and put them over in the storage solution that I created, but keeping the front sheet of the Doodlebug petite prints in the collection so that I can reference the colors that are used. I looked through my dies to try to find a Polaroid that would work, but none of them were the right size for the 3x4. So I went back to my silhouette and decided to cut them out from there. At first, I just started out with just doing it one at a time to make sure that I really liked it. After I went through the orange and the plaid, I was like, absolutely, this is what I want. I am loving the way that this is turning out. So I do decide to add the darker blue, the green, and the yellow to my mat. I was a little concerned about the swimming pool blue because it was really close to the same size as the Polaroid, and I decided that I would wait on that one. Once I got all of the other ones cut out, I used the leftover pieces and realized it was just too small. I didn't have another piece of the swimming pool, so I decided to pull out the pistachio, and I'm so glad that I did because I pulled out the wood grain, and I just love the way that that wood grain looks with all of the other petite prints, including the plaid and the buffalo check. So now that I have figured out all of the Polaroids, I pull out my flip-flaps. I picked up my flip-flaps from Close to My Heart before they went out of business, but these still are available from Creative Memories, as well as Scrapbook.com under the Simple Stories Project Life label. I was able to get 4 additional photos, and I like to adhere the photos together so that they don't move around in the flip-flap. I try to cut my photos down so that they fit really snugly in the flip-flaps, but sometimes I do cut them a little short. Once I adhered them down, I do trim them off to make sure that there is no white of the photo showing. I then added the photos behind the Polaroid, and I did use some washi tape to secure them in place. The space between the photos and the Polaroids was just way too small to try to put some liquid adhesive or ATG behind it. Once I got all 6 of the Polaroids backed with the photos, I pulled out my T-square ruler to adhere it down. I started on the far right-hand side with the green one, and then went to the far right-hand side with the yellow one so that I could make sure that my spacing was evenly distributed between the Polaroids. Then going to the top row, I used my T-square ruler to make sure that the Polaroids were straight across, and then just kind of eyeballing the pieces below it. I then pulled out my embellishment pieces from this collection, and I still have quite a bit left. I found this tag here that says Adventure Awaits, and I love the mountains and the fire as well as the trees. So I did decide to put that up on fun foam and add it right next to the title. I then pulled out this fire, but it was way too big. So I pulled out the icons. When I purchased the Doodlebug collections, I like to have all of the pieces, the chit chats, the icons, and the mini icons, because I never know what size I will need. Plus, I feel like I can get a ton of layouts done when I have all 3 of those pieces. I was able to find a sticker for each one of the Polaroids. It includes a fire pit, a map, a lantern, a bucket of fish, a tent, as well as a can of food. I did play around with them for a little bit, trying to figure out which order that I wanted them in. I wanted to make sure that the colors were different than the colors of the Polaroid, and it wasn't clashing with the item that was next to it. I also pulled out the mini icons and looked through them, but I didn't find anything that I felt like I needed to add to it. I used my liquid adhesive to add down the Adventure Awaits on the left, and adding my stamping block on top of it to add some weight while it dried. I pulled out the sticker sheet, and there's a bunch of word phrases on the sticker sheet, and I first counted to make sure that I would have enough to fit on each one of the Polaroids, and I was so happy that I did. So the word stickers that I pulled out say adventure, be wild, live free, camp life, great outdoors, good times, and wild things. And I think that that really embodies the Tom Sawyer Island feel. And I was so happy that I was able to find one for each one of the Polaroids. I then found a compass, which I thought was perfect, and I added that to the left-hand side of the layout. I then looked through the 6x6 paper pad into the tags, and I found this one tag that has a bunch of trees on it and a canoe. And while we do take a raft over to Tom Sawyer's Island and not a canoe, I just felt like it was very fitting for the whole vibe of this layout. I also decided that I wanted a little cluster in the upper right-hand side of the left-hand side of the layout. So I found another orange tag that has the compass on it, and I added it to the right. I then started to look through the mini icons, and I was able to find a tree. I added that to the bottom cluster. And then I thought that it would be really cool if I started to build up that cluster on the right with different tools that Tom Sawyer and Huck might find. So I did feel like I needed to adhere down the 5x7 photo, so I did that, and then I started to build up that cluster. I have this little flashlight. I used some foam adhesive to add that to the top part of it, and then I added a pair of binoculars. I also found a little water lily and cattail, so I added that next to my canoe tag. I then found a little pocket knife, and I added that to the upper right hand side. Then I pulled out the shape sprinkles, and I was able to find a axe, which I thought, yeah, Tom Sawyer might have an axe. At this point, I pulled out my tweezers because I was trying to find the right placement. And what was really throwing me off was the tag. I didn't like the fact that the tag was so busy because then I was having issues with all the other pieces that I was adding to it. So I found another tag, and I decided to use the back of it so that it was just showing the white part at the bottom, and then I had the plaid print at the top. And that made everything start to fall into place. I added back my binoculars, axe, and pocket knife, as well as a little water canteen. I found a smaller tree and added that to the bottom left. And then on the shape sprinkles, I was able to find a little stick that had a hot dog on it. So I added that to my cluster, and I took out the pocket knife and moved it to the bottom of the cluster. And I will tell you, that is probably my favorite little cluster in this entire layout. It just came together so well. It did take me a little bit. I had to remove everything because I wasn't liking the order that they were on, and I wanted to make sure that everything was touching and it all flowed really well. I then pulled out an enamel dot from the collection, but I wasn't liking the way that they looked, so I decided to pull out my color boxes. I first pulled out the green, and the enamel dots that come with the collection were way too big for those little tags. So I was able to find a really tiny green one to add to the tag on the left, as well as an orange one to add to the tag at the top right. And then I started to add some enamel dots to the title cluster. I added enamel dots in the blue, orange, and green. And then I'm just now showing you what it would look like with the flip-flops on. And that is it for this video. Here is my final layout as well as some close-ups. I did my journaling offline, and it says, as Eli explored the island, we stumbled upon a treasure trove of adventures at every turn. We meandered down rugged dirt trails, flanked by towering trees, dove into mysterious caves, discovered shipwrecks, and even uncovered some ancient forts. Make sure you check out the playlist that's listed below to see how everyone else interpreted this sketch, and I will see you guys tomorrow. If you enjoyed this video, if you wouldn't mind giving me a thumbs up, I would really appreciate it. If you haven't done so already and you want to see more double page layout inspiration, make sure you hit that subscribe button. Thanks everyone for watching, and I hope that you have a scrappy day.